Lyra moved through the silver streets of Zerath City with her usual brisk confidence. Towers of gleaming metal rose around her, each one a testament to Zephyrian ingenuity and precision. Light streams flowed along the streets in neat patterns, illuminating the faces of Zephyrians who, like her, thrived on logic and knowledge. She could feel the pulse of the city beneath her feet, a steady rhythm of science and reason. Nothing was random here, nothing unplanned. And yet, in the midst of all this order, she found herself thinking about something far less structured: human legends. For as long as she could remember, the stories of humans had circulated quietly among scholars and explorers. Tales of their courage, creativity, and strange, unpredictable ways were whispered in lecture halls and research chambers. To the Zephyrians, humans were often regarded as myths, a distant race of primitive beings who had somehow survived against incredible odds. Most Zephyrians dismissed the legends outright, seeing humans as curious anomalies but not worth serious study. Lyra, however, had a particular passion for debunking them. She prided herself on her sharp mind and her devotion to evidence. Legends, she believed, were nothing more than tales spun by naive civilizations, exaggerated over generations until they became entertaining stories with no real substance. In her lecture hall that morning, Lyra paced in front of her students. Her silver robes reflected the soft blue light of the city's energy grids. "Humans," she said, voice confident and unwavering, "are a species of inefficiency. They survive through luck, improvisation, and error. Their stories of heroism are laughable when compared to the precision of a Zephyrian mind. No human could possibly achieve what our civilization accomplishes in a single day." Her students nodded politely, though some secretly admired humans' audacity. Lyra's words were sharp, precise, and meant to leave no room for doubt. She had spent years studying human myths, gathering reports from distant star charts, and every single story had failed to impress her. "Consider the tale of the human captain," she continued, pacing in measured steps. "Supposedly, he led a fleet against impossible odds, defeating enemies 10 times stronger. Impossible. Our simulations show such outcomes as improbable to the point of absurdity. Yet humans claim them as fact. Why? Because their legends are designed to entertain, not to reflect reality." A young student raised a hand hesitantly. "But Master Lyra, some accounts show humans solving problems that even Zephyrians find difficult. How do you explain that?" Lyra smiled, a cool, knowing smile. "Ah, my curious student. That is precisely the point. Humans survive through trial and error. If they stumble onto success, it is not because of skill but because of chance. Imagine a creature who keeps trying over and over, hoping for a favorable outcome. Is that courage or is it simply luck?" The student opened his mouth, but Lyra silenced him with a gentle lift of her hand. "No need to respond. Humans are fascinating, yes, but not remarkable. Our civilization moves with reason, efficiency, and precision. They move with chaos. Chaos is rarely heroic." After the lecture, Lyra walked to the observation decks of the university. She loved the view of the galaxy beyond Zerath. Stars glimmered like scattered jewels, some familiar, some distant and unexplored. The blackness of space seemed endless, but even there everything had rules. Celestial mechanics, energy flows, and orbital patterns, all predictable. She admired the order, and it comforted her. As she watched, an unusual signal flickered across her wrist display. At first, she thought it was a sensor glitch. Rarely did anything unexpected appear near Zephyrian space, but the signal persisted. A pulsing rhythm unlike anything she had cataloged before. It was faint, yet it carried a strange energy that made her chest tighten with curiosity. Lyra frowned. Her first instinct was skepticism. Likely a misreading, she muttered to herself. Yet something about the signal did not sit right. She adjusted the sensors and ran the calculations again. The readings remained. The anomaly was real. It originated from a region far beyond known human exploration, yet it bore signatures that no Zephyrian technology could explain. Her mind raced. Could it be human? The thought seemed absurd. She shook her head. Humans were confined to legend. They were stories, not reality. Yet here was data suggesting otherwise. Something tangible, something impossible. Her curiosity overcame caution. She sent a message to the University Council, requesting authorization to investigate the source personally. It was a bold move, unusual for someone her age, but Lyra had never been one to shy away from challenge. She wanted answers, not excuses. Hours later, she was aboard the sleek research vessel Luminaris, leaving the orderly streets of Zerath behind. The city's lights faded, replaced by the cold, beautiful expanse of space. She floated in the observation chamber, eyes fixed on the stars, heart pounding with anticipation. The anomaly grew stronger as she approached. Her instruments tracked a small vessel, one unlike any Zypherian design. It was irregular, asymmetrical, and its energy output fluctuated in ways that defied logic. Lyra's lips parted in disbelief. "Impossible," she whispered. "No civilization should build like this. No one could—" Her mind raced. The ship was unmistakably artificial, but it moved with a strange, almost organic efficiency. It dodged minor asteroids with creativity rather than sheer power, and its energy pulse seemed alive, responsive, aware. The realization hit her like a shockwave. Humans were not just legends. They were real. And they were here in Zypherian space. She felt a mixture of awe and disbelief. The entire foundation of her beliefs trembled. The species she had laughed at, dismissed as primitive and chaotic, was now standing before her eyes, challenging everything she had known about order and efficiency. Lyra activated the ship's external scanners, examining every detail. The hull was patchwork, repaired in ways that no Zypherian engineer would ever attempt, yet it held together perfectly. The propulsion system was modest, almost fragile, but the ship moved with confidence, defying every assumption she had about space travel. Her scientific mind demanded an explanation. Her heart, however, was filled with something she had never admitted before: wonder. "This changes everything," she whispered to herself. "Humans, they are not what I thought." Her crew noticed her silence, exchanging nervous glances. Lyra's reputation as a skeptic was well known, and seeing her so absorbed in something unexplainable was unusual. "What is it, Master Lyra?" one of the crew asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I cannot yet say, but this is unlike anything we have ever seen." For hours, the luminaries followed the vessel, careful not to interfere. Lyra documented every movement, every signal, every anomaly. Her datapads filled rapidly, her mind alive with questions. How had humans developed such ingenuity? How had they survived against the odds she had always dismissed as impossible? Night fell across the observation chamber, though in space darkness was constant. The stars continued their silent dance, indifferent to the tiny human vessel navigating among them. Lyra stared at it, mesmerized, feeling a strange connection to a species she had once considered trivial. For the first time in her life, she wondered, what if legends were not lies, but truths misunderstood by those too rigid to see them? The thought was thrilling and terrifying. As the ship disappeared briefly behind a cluster of asteroids, Lyra leaned back in her chair, hands clasped together. She realized she was no longer laughing at humans. She was preparing to meet them, and the anticipation filled her with both fear and excitement. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that this encounter would change her life, and perhaps the lives of all Zypherians. The stars outside shimmered, infinite and unknowable, and yet among them a small irregular vessel moved with quiet certainty. Humanity had arrived, and Lyra, once a skeptic, could only watch in awe. Lyra's heart pounded as the strange vessel emerged from the shadow of the asteroid cluster. It was small, irregular, and seemingly fragile. Compared to Zypherian ships, which gleamed with perfect symmetry and precise engineering, this human ship looked almost chaotic. Its hull bore patches of different metals, repairs that seemed improvised, yet it moved with a confidence that could not be ignored. The Luminaris' sensors buzzed with readings that defied every law of Zypherian engineering. Energy fluctuations, maneuver patterns, and propulsion signatures all were unusual, inconsistent, and brilliant in ways Lyra could not immediately explain. "This is impossible," she whispered, leaning over the data console. "No ship should operate like this. No design could survive." Yet it does. Her crew shared uneasy glances. To them, the human vessel was unpredictable, almost reckless. Yet every maneuver it made avoided danger perfectly. Rocks, debris, and energy currents that would have shredded a Zypherian vessel seemed to part effortlessly before it. Lyra's skepticism had vanished, replaced by a feeling she could barely name: awe. "Master Lyra," her second-in-command spoke carefully, "it is approaching the edge of our monitored space. Should we attempt communication?" Lyra nodded slowly, Yes, prepare the signal, but keep it neutral. I want them to know we are here, but not threatened. The crew worked swiftly, sending a calm, precise message in Zephyrian code. We observe. Identify yourself. There was silence. Moments stretched into minutes, and Lyra began to wonder if the humans even understood communication. She glanced at the sensors, noting the vessel's pattern. The human ship paused briefly, as if considering her message. Then it responded in a way she did not expect. It mirrored the energy pattern of her transmission, a clear and deliberate imitation that spoke of intelligence and awareness. They understand, Lyra breathed. They are thinking, responding. The vessel drew closer, and Lyra's instruments recorded every detail. The hull had uneven panels, makeshift reinforcements, and exposed systems that a Zephyrian engineer would consider dangerous. Yet the vessel emitted a quiet, steady hum of energy, showing no sign of instability. Its movements were clever, economical, and adaptive. Lyra's mind raced. Humans had survived against odds that would have destroyed entire fleets. They had faced challenges with creativity rather than raw power. And now, standing before her eyes, one such human vessel was showing her just how true the legends were. Prepare a boarding protocol, she ordered. I want to observe them up close. But caution, approach only if necessary. I do not want conflict. The crew nodded, though tension filled the air. Humans were unknown, unpredictable, yet Lyra felt an irresistible pull to learn more, to witness the living proof of stories she had long dismissed. The human vessel made a sudden move, darting between two energy currents that would have crushed a Zephyrian ship. The maneuver was daring, almost reckless, yet perfect. Lyra's eyes widened. They are improvising, she said, a mixture of disbelief and admiration in her voice. They are thinking in ways we cannot predict. Minutes later, a projection appeared above the vessel, a holographic image, crude by Zephyrian standards, but unmistakably humanoid. The figure raised a hand in greeting, and though its features were simple, Lyra recognized something in the eyes. Intelligence, confidence, and courage. This is a human, Lyra whispered. Alive, real. The crew exchanged glances, some nervous, others fascinated. To them, the human was a living paradox, primitive in appearance yet astonishingly capable. Lyra approached the communicator. We are Zephyrians of Zerath. Identify yourself and your intentions. The human figure tilted its head, then spoke in a language Lyra did not immediately recognize. The tones were strange, rough and uneven, yet somehow she understood them through universal translation systems. I am Captain Ethan, the human said, voice calm but firm. We mean no harm. We are explorers traveling through this sector. Lyra's mind struggled to process. The legend spoke of courage, ingenuity, and resilience. But hearing a human speak, calmly asserting their presence in Zephyrian space, made the stories come alive. Explorers? She repeated. You are far from your homeworld, Ethan nodded. Yes, we travel where our curiosity and mission take us. We seek knowledge and contact with other civilizations. We do not conquer or destroy. We observe, learn, and adapt. Lyra studied him, noting the calm certainty in his posture, the deliberate clarity in his voice. The legends were not exaggerations. Humans had survived by thinking differently, acting boldly, and embracing risk with intelligence. A sudden alert interrupted her thoughts. Zephyrian sensors detected a minor asteroid cluster shifting nearby, moving dangerously close to the human ship. Without thinking, Lyra activated the warning system. Brace for impact. But Ethan's response was immediate and astonishing. The human ship twisted, ducked, and darted with a grace that no Zephyrian simulation could predict. It slipped through the rocks, exploiting gaps that seemed too small for any vessel to pass. Lyra's jaw dropped. They see possibilities we cannot even calculate, she murmured. They do not follow rules, they create them. Her crew stared, silent. Even the most experienced officers could not believe the human skill. Every move was instinctive, clever, and daring. It was not chaos. It was a pattern beyond Zephyrian logic. After the ship passed safely through the cluster, Ethan projected a small wave in acknowledgement, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. Lyra felt a strange warmth, a connection that transcended words or species. She had come to mock humans, to laugh at their legends, and yet here they were. living proof of ingenuity, courage, and unpredictability. "Prepare a docking protocol," Lyra ordered. "I want to meet this human to understand him." The crew hesitated. Docking with a human ship was untested. Any mistake could be dangerous. Yet Lyra's determination overrode caution. She wanted answers, insight, and proof. As the luminaries aligned with the human vessel, Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. The legends she had dismissed were no longer stories, they were living reality. And reality, she realized, was far more fascinating than myth. The docking sequence was smooth despite the differences in design. The human ship's irregular hull fit surprisingly well against the Zephyrian clamps. Lyra's instruments recorded every detail: energy patterns, hull integrity, propulsion output. Nothing in her data suggested instability. Everything suggested genius, ingenuity, and adaptation. As the airlock opened, Lyra stepped forward, heart pounding. The first human she would meet in her life stood before her, not as a story or a legend, but as a living, breathing being. Ethan's eyes met hers, calm and confident. "Greetings," he said. "I am pleased to meet you." Lyra hesitated, then bowed slightly, a Zephyrian gesture of respect. "I am Lyra, a scholar of myths and legends. I admit, I did not expect to meet you." Ethan smiled faintly. "Many doubt what they have not seen. I suppose that is natural." Lyra studied him carefully, noting his posture, his steady gaze, and the quiet authority in his voice. Everything about him radiated capability, courage, and intelligence. She realized that all the Zephyrians' assumptions about humans, their weakness, their chaos, their simplicity, were false. Humans survived not by following rules, but by mastering the art of possibility. The legends had been right all along. Lyra's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alarm on her wrist display. A cosmic storm, larger than any Zephyrian sensor had ever predicted, was heading toward Zerath City. Its trajectory was unpredictable, its energy immense. The human ship was closer to danger than any Zephyrian vessel had ever been in such conditions. Lyra's pulse quickened. "We may need their help," she said quietly. "We may have to rely on them." The realization sent a shiver through her. She had laughed at humans, mocked their stories, and dismissed their ingenuity. And now, not only had a human appeared before her eyes, but the survival of her city, and perhaps her people, might depend on his skills. Lyra turned to the crew. "We are entering uncharted territory. Prepare for collaboration. We must learn from him, even if it challenges everything we know." The human Ethan stood calmly, seemingly aware of the gravity of the situation without panic. He exuded confidence and focus, qualities that legends had always spoken of, now fully alive before her eyes. For the first time, Lyra felt a mixture of fear and hope, a combination she had never experienced. The skeptic inside her was silent, replaced by something new: admiration, curiosity, and awe. The human legend was real, and it had arrived in her space right before her eyes. Lyra stood at the edge of the docking bay, her heart racing. The human Ethan stepped off his ship and onto the polished platform of the Luminaris. Every movement he made seemed deliberate yet natural, confident yet careful. His appearance was simple, a uniform that looked practical rather than decorative, but his presence carried an undeniable authority. For a moment, Lyra could only stare. All the stories she had read, all the legends she had dismissed now existed in front of her. Humans were not weak, chaotic, or primitive. They were adaptive, resourceful, and undeniably alive in ways her data could never fully explain. "Welcome to Zerath," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. "I am Lyra, a scholar of myths and legends. You have proven that some legends are true." Ethan inclined his head politely. "I am honored, Lyra. I have heard much about your civilization. It is an impressive place." Lyra felt a small surge of pride. Zephyrians had achieved extraordinary precision in their society, their technology, and their science. Yet she also noticed something about Ethan that her people often lacked: unpredictability, creativity, and the ability to solve problems in ways Zephyrians might never consider. "Please, follow me," she said, motioning toward the research labs. "I want to show you our systems, and I hope you can tell us more about your methods." As they walked, Lyra studied him carefully. Humans, she realized, had a different energy, a mixture of determination and curiosity. He observed their environment with attention to detail, yet he moved freely, unrestrained by the rules and rigidity that defined Zephyrian culture. In the lab, Lyra explained the readings from his ship. Ethan listened attentively, nodding occasionally, and asked questions that were precise but unconventional. His perspective was different. Where Zephyrians relied on theory and calculation alone, he considered alternatives based on intuition and observation. "You see," Ethan said, "sometimes the solution is not in what you calculate, but in what you notice. Patterns emerge in unexpected ways." Lyra frowned thoughtfully. He was right. Zephyrians valued rules, structure, and predictability above all else. Humans, however, seemed to embrace the chaos of the universe as a tool rather than a threat. Before Lyra could respond, a warning signal blared through the lab. The cosmic storm they had detected earlier was shifting faster than anticipated, heading directly toward Zerath City. Its energy readings were immense, far beyond what any Zephyrian defense systems could contain alone. Lyra's pulse quickened. This could be catastrophic. Our shields may not hold. Ethan examined the data rapidly. "We need to act quickly. There is a solution, but it will require combining your technology with unconventional methods." Lyra's brow furrowed. "Unconventional methods? Our council will not approve improvisation. They follow strict protocols." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes rules cannot solve a problem. We must adapt, or the result will be failure." Lyra realized that here was the very essence of human ingenuity: adaptability. Zephyrians approached problems with precision, but humans approached problems with creativity. The difference was subtle but powerful. She turned to her crew. "We will listen to him. He may show us a way to save the city." Minutes later, the council chambers filled with tense, nervous faces. Zephyrians debated, argued, and calculated, but none could see a clear solution. Lyra stepped forward, presenting Ethan's ideas. The council murmured. Humans solving their problems? The very idea challenged centuries of tradition. Yet Lyra stood firm. He has seen the storm, analyzed the data, and offers a method. It is untested, but if we refuse, our city may be lost. The head counselor hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. We will follow your lead, Lyra. But this will be our final test." Ethan moved to the control systems, working alongside Zephyrian engineers. His methods were strange but effective. He suggested rerouting energy in unconventional ways, combining power sources in patterns Zephyrians had never considered, and synchronizing the city's shields with his ship's systems. Lyra watched in awe. Every suggestion he made seemed impossible, yet it worked. His intuition, creativity, and calm confidence guided the Zephyrians through a process they had deemed unsolvable. Hours passed, and the storm approached. The city's defensive shields pulsed in harmony with Ethan's calculations. Lyra's instruments tracked every energy spike, every ripple in the storm, every fluctuation in the cosmic currents. The humans' methods were unpredictable, yet they were precise in their effect. At last, the storm hit the outer energy shields. Lightning-like arcs danced across the sky, and winds of pure energy swept past the city. Zephyrians held their breath, watching the result of this collaboration. The shields shuddered, bent, and adapted. Energy flowed in ways that defied standard calculations. And then slowly the storm began to dissipate. Its force diminished, redirected safely into space, leaving the city untouched. Lyra exhaled, her heart racing. She turned to Ethan, eyes wide with admiration. You've saved us. Your methods, your perspective. It is remarkable." Ethan smiled gently. "I am glad I could help. But it was not just me. Your people's technology, combined with cooperation, made it possible. Humanity alone would not have succeeded." Lyra felt a mixture of humility and wonder. Humans, she realized, were not superior in the ways Zephyrians measured strength. They were extraordinary because they combined curiosity, creativity, and courage in ways Zephyrians had never considered. After the crisis passed, Lyra and Ethan walked through the city. Citizens emerged from their homes, gazing at the sky, marveling at the survival of their homeworld. Zephyrians whispered among themselves, realizing that humans had achieved what seemed impossible. "Do they understand?" a young Zephyrian whispered to Lyra. "They understand now," Lyra replied softly. "Humans are not what we thought. They are something more, something we have underestimated," Ethan observed quietly, his calm presence steadying those around him. He did not boast, did not demand recognition, yet his actions had changed Zephyrian perception forever. Lyra stopped at the edge of a plaza, looking up at the stars. She thought of all the legends she had dismissed, all the stories she had laughed at. And now, standing beside her was proof that humans were not myths. They were real, capable, and inspiring. "Captain Ethan," she said, voice quiet but firm. I misjudged your people. I laughed at the legends. But now I see. They were right. Humans are extraordinary. Ethan nodded. I understand. Many doubt us until they see us themselves. I am glad you have seen the truth. Lyra smiled, a mixture of relief and excitement. She felt a shift inside her, a recognition that the universe was bigger, more unpredictable, and more fascinating than she had ever imagined. Humans had arrived not only in Zephyrian space, but also in her mind, challenging everything she thought she knew. That night, Lyra returned to her quarters. She stared out at the city, now calm after the storm, and reflected on the events. Humanity had proven that courage, creativity, and ingenuity were not bound by technology or size. They thrived in spirit, in thought, and in action. She thought about the human vessel, the ingenuity it represented, and the bravery of the people behind it. She thought about Ethan, his calm confidence and the way he had inspired her and her people to act beyond fear and strict logic. For the first time, Lyra considered the possibilities. Humans could not be contained by assumptions, dismissed by prejudice, or underestimated by rigid thought. They were adaptable, brave, and astonishingly clever. Lyra's skepticism was gone. In its place stood curiosity, admiration, and determination. She would learn from these humans, understand them, and perhaps discover ways to improve Zephyrian society through collaboration. Legends, she realized, were not lies. They were windows into truths that some were not ready to see, and now she had seen one of those truths firsthand. The human legend was alive, and it had changed her world forever. Lyra barely had time to rest after the cosmic storm. Her mind raced with calculations, strategies, and new questions about human ingenuity. Yet the calm of the city was deceptive. Another, far greater threat loomed beyond Zephyrian space, one that no conventional defense could stop. The alert came in the early hours. The Luminari's sensors detected an enormous energy wave, a massive cosmic storm unlike anything recorded before. It was hurtling toward Zerath City at alarming speed, carrying destructive electromagnetic pulses and gravitational turbulence. Entire districts could be destroyed if the storm reached them. Lyra's pulse quickened. This is far worse than before, she said, her voice tense. Our shields alone will not survive. We will need ingenuity. Her gaze fell on Ethan, who was calmly analyzing the storm's trajectory. We have to act quickly, he said. If we work together, combining your technology with adaptive strategies, we can reduce the impact. The council convened urgently. Cypherians debated options, calculating shield frequencies, energy outputs, and structural reinforcements. Everything they proposed relied on precision and predictability. Yet the storm was chaotic, constantly shifting, unpredictable in every way. The council grew frustrated, unable to find a solution that satisfied their strict protocols. Lyra stepped forward. We need to try something different, she said. We cannot rely on calculations alone. Captain Ethan has methods we have never considered. If we refuse, we risk everything. Murmurs swept through the chamber. The idea of trusting a human, an outsider, a species they had once laughed at, was unthinkable to many. Yet the evidence from the first storm was undeniable. The head counselor finally nodded reluctantly. Very well. We will follow your lead, Lyra, but the responsibility will fall on both of you. Ethan approached the central console. We must combine systems, he explained. Your shields are strong but rigid. They respond to predictable forces. My approach adapts to chaos. Together we can create a flexible defense. Lyra watched as he began connecting Zephyrian systems with his own ship's interface. It was unconventional. Power lines were rerouted in patterns that seemed illogical, energy pulses synchronized in unusual rhythms, and adaptive feedback loops were introduced, methods Zephyrians would never dare attempt. Her crew hesitated at first, unsure whether to follow his guidance. Lyra's eyes met theirs. Trust him. We survived the last storm because of him. We can survive this too. Minutes later, the storm entered Zephyrian space. Energy currents roared past the outer sectors. Lightning arcs danced unpredictably across space, and gravity waves threatened to destabilize orbiting structures. The city's shields activated. but the storm's chaotic power overwhelmed conventional defenses almost immediately. Ethan's calm voice cut through the tension. We need to think dynamically. Use the ship's adaptive systems to complement your shields. Focus energy where it is needed, then shift it in response to the storm. Do not try to resist, it will destroy you. Flow with it, Lyra quickly understood. Unlike Zephyrians who sought to control the storm completely, humans sought to work with it, to redirect its energy without trying to dominate it. She issued commands synchronizing the city's shield generators with Ethan's adaptive system. The results were astonishing. Energy flows shifted like water around rocks. Arcs of the storm diverted and gravitational turbulence dissipated in controlled waves. Lyra monitored every fluctuation, adjusting outputs as Ethan suggested. It was a delicate dance, balancing precision with improvisation. For hours they fought the storm. Every pulse, every adjustment mattered. Cypherians were amazed by Ethan's ability to predict patterns in chaos, to anticipate changes the storm itself seemed to make. His methods combined instinct, observation, and creativity, tools Zephyrians rarely used. At one point, a massive surge threatened the city's core shields. Zephyrian engineers panicked, prepared to shut down the system to prevent damage. Ethan, however, remained calm. Do not withdraw. Redirect the flow here and here, he instructed, pointing to areas Lyra's instruments could barely track. Lyra hesitated, then followed his lead. Energy lines bent, shields shifted, and the surge passed harmlessly over the city. The council watched in stunned silence. The humans' instincts had saved the day again. By the time the storm began to weaken, exhaustion weighed on the crew. The city was intact. Buildings had minor surface damage, but no lives were lost. Zephyrians who had doubted humans now whispered in awe. Lyra approached Ethan as the final energy waves dissipated. You saved the city, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. Your methods, your thinking. It is incredible. Ethan shook his head. I did not do it alone. You and your people provided the tools. I only suggested a way to use them differently. Humans alone could not have survived such a storm either. It is collaboration that matters. Lyra smiled, feeling a new respect for both humans and her own people. The storm had shown her something essential. Ingenuity was not just about rules or calculations. It was about seeing possibilities, taking risks, and working together. In the aftermath, the council convened again. They recognized Ethan's role not as an intruder or outsider, but as a partner. Lyra presented her observations, highlighting the humans' creativity, courage, and calm decision-making. This is what legends speak of, she said, addressing the council. Humans are not myths. They are real, and they are capable of extraordinary feats. We can learn from them, if we are willing to adapt and listen. Some council members nodded reluctantly, still unsure how to incorporate human methods into their rigid protocols. Others, however, were inspired, seeing the potential of combining Zephyrian precision with human creativity. Lyra returned to the observation deck, exhausted but exhilarated. She gazed at the stars, her mind alive with new possibilities. Humans had arrived not only in space but also in her thinking. They challenged assumptions, defied expectations, and showed that courage and ingenuity were not bound by species. Ethan joined her quietly. He did not speak at first, simply observing the view. Then he said, "You handled that well, Lyra. You trusted what seemed impossible and acted." Lyra laughed softly. "I had no choice. If I had doubted, we would have lost everything." "You humans, you are not like anything I expected." Ethan smiled faintly. "We are not perfect, but we survive. And sometimes surviving means seeing things differently than others do." Lyra considered his words. Humans survived not because they were stronger or faster, but because they were adaptable, creative, and willing to face uncertainty with courage. Zephyrians, with all their precision, often lacked this kind of boldness. That night, the city celebrated survival. Streets glimmered with lights restored after the storm. Citizens marveled at the sky, and Zephyrians whispered stories of the human who had helped them. Legends, Lyra realized, were not just stories. They were glimpses of truths that some were not ready to accept. She looked at Ethan and thought about the journey ahead. Humanity had proven itself not just as a legend but as a force of inspiration. And she, once a skeptic, now felt a deep sense of purpose. She would learn from humans, understand them, and perhaps teach her people that courage, creativity, and collaboration were as powerful as precision and technology. Lyra's mind raced with questions, possibilities, and plans. Humans had arrived, and with them came the potential to change everything about how Zephyrians understood the universe, and themselves. For the first time, Lyra believed that legends were not lies, but lessons waiting to be discovered. And the next chapter, she knew, would test them all even further. The stars beyond Zerath shimmered calm and eternal, yet Lyra knew that their journey had only just begun. Humanity was here, and their story would reshape the future of her world. The morning after the storm, Zerath City shimmered under the soft light of its twin suns. Buildings gleamed, streets sparkled, and the citizens went about their routines, though whispers of admiration for the human visitors filled the air. The tales of bravery and ingenuity had already begun circulating among the Zephyrians. For once, legends were no longer distant stories. They were truth. Lyra walked through the city, her mind alive with reflection. Humans were real, humans were extraordinary, and humans had taught her something that no lesson, lecture, or calculation ever could. Courage and creativity were as vital as precision. Ethan had remained in the city since the storm, helping coordinate repairs and sharing ideas with Zephyrian engineers. His calm confidence and willingness to collaborate had inspired the people. Lyra knew the council still struggled with fully accepting human methods, yet she also knew that hearts and minds had already begun to change. She found Ethan in the central engineering hub, crouched over a holographic display of energy flows. He was analyzing the city's shield network, suggesting minor improvements based on his observations during the storm. "Good morning, Captain Ethan," she greeted. "How are you today?" He looked up and smiled faintly. "Good morning, Lyra. Tired but pleased with the progress here. Your people are talented, willing to learn, and adaptable. That makes my work easier." Lyra chuckled softly. "I never thought I'd hear a human say that about Zephyrians." Ethan shrugged. "Every species has strengths. Collaboration brings out the best in all of us." Lyra nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that humans were not only capable, they were humble, practical, and focused on results rather than recognition. They thrived in ways her people often overlooked. Later, the council summoned Lyra to present a full report on the events. She walked into the grand chamber, taking a deep breath. The council members sat in rigid formations, their expressions serious but expectant. Lyra began her report. "Esteemed councilors, I stand before you today to provide evidence of what we have witnessed. Humans, long dismissed as legends, are real, capable, and courageous. Their methods, while unconventional, demonstrate a type of ingenuity that complements our own precision. They have saved our city, shown remarkable skill, and proven that collaboration between our species can achieve the impossible." Whispers echoed through the chamber. Some councilors remained skeptical, but many nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. Lyra continued, recounting the events of the storm, the human ship's maneuvers, and Ethan's adaptive strategies. "They do not follow rules as we do," she said. "They improvise, observe, and act with creativity. Their success is not based on chance, but on courage, insight, and flexibility. It is a model from which we can learn." The head counselor, an elder named Valor, finally spoke. "Lyra, your observations are thorough and convincing. Humans have indeed demonstrated their capability. We acknowledge their contribution and extend our gratitude. They have earned our respect." Lyra felt a sense of pride and relief. The council's recognition meant that humans would no longer be dismissed as myths, but instead seen as potential partners and allies. She turned to the human ambassador, Ethan, who had quietly entered the chamber. Ethan inclined his head in acknowledgement. "It is an honor to receive your respect. My people have long admired the achievements of the Zephyrians. We are pleased to learn from you as well." The council members murmured in approval. Some approached Ethan with questions, eager to understand his methods, his reasoning, and the way humans approached problems. Lyra watched with satisfaction as walls of prejudice began to crumble, replaced by curiosity and admiration. After the council meeting, Lyra led Ethan to the observation deck overlooking the city. The twin suns bathed the metropolis in golden light, highlighting the harmony of technology and structure. "You've changed everything, Ethan," Lyra said quietly. "Not just the city, but the way we think." "The way I think," Ethan smiled gently. "Humans have always relied on observation and adaptation. We survive not by being stronger or faster, but by thinking differently. Perhaps your people will find ways to incorporate that into your own society." Lyra nodded. She reflected on her journey from skepticism to admiration. She had laughed at legends, mocked stories, and dismissed human ingenuity. Yet in just a few days, everything she believed about humans had been challenged and transformed. As they watched the city below, a young Zephyrian approached them, wide-eyed with curiosity. "Master Lyra, Captain Ethan," the young one said. "Do you think humans will come again? Will we learn more from them?" Lyra placed a hand on the youth's shoulder. "Yes," she said. "Humans will return and we will learn much from them. Courage, creativity, and collaboration are not bound by species. They are universal. We must be ready to embrace them." Ethan nodded. "And I look forward to it. There is much we can share, much we can achieve together. Legends are only the beginning. Reality can be even greater." Later, as preparations began for Ethan and his crew to depart, Lyra felt a strange mixture of sadness and gratitude. She had come to admire humans not just for their skill, but for their spirit. They were brave, clever, and inspiring. They had arrived as legends, but they left as teachers, friends, and symbols of possibility. The city gathered to watch the human ship's departure. Citizens cheered quietly, not out of fear or obligation, but out of respect and wonder. Zephyrians whispered stories to one another, stories that had once seemed impossible, now alive in their memories. Lyra stood with Ethan at the edge of the docking bay. "I will never forget this," she said. "You have proven that legends can be true, and that courage and ingenuity can thrive anywhere." Ethan smiled warmly. "Neither will I, Lyra. Your people have been generous, open, and willing to trust. That is rare in any civilization. Remember, it is not just strength or technology that defines a species, it is their spirit." Lyra nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose. Humanity had arrived in her life not as myth, but as reality. They had changed her perspective, inspired her people, and reminded her that the universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of possibilities waiting to be discovered. As the human ship lifted from the docking bay and soared into the stars, Lyra felt a profound sense of hope. Humanity had proven that courage, creativity, and ingenuity could inspire even the most advanced civilizations. Legends were no longer distant, they were alive, and they could shape the future. Turning back to the city, Lyra reflected on the lessons learned. Humans had shown that survival was not just about rules or strength, but about adaptation, observation, and boldness. She vowed to carry this knowledge forward, to teach her people that courage and creativity were just as powerful as logic and precision. The stars above Zerath shone brightly, a reminder of the infinite possibilities that lay beyond. Lyra knew that humans would return someday, and when they did, Zephyrians would be ready. They would face the future with a new understanding, a respect for courage, ingenuity, and the extraordinary spirit of humanity. As the human ship disappeared into the distant cosmos, Lyra whispered quietly to herself, a smile on her lips. "Legends are real, and now I have seen one with my own eyes." The universe was vast, full of mysteries, and filled with stories yet to be told. And for the first time, Lyra felt certain of one truth above all: humanity, with its courage, creativity, and indomitable spirit, would always inspire, and perhaps one day lead the way among the stars.